Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of A Moment With. This is the best podcast in the country, and I'm going to keep it absolutely 100% with you guys. I'm not going to finish the intro like I usually do because that's how excited I am for today's guest on the show. Today, we have Dane Watson, the founder of Goodlids, on the show. So, welcome, Dane, and thank you for coming out and spending the time to jump on the show today.
Cheers, bro. No, thanks so much for having me.
All good. And so let's just crack right into it. So, Goodlids, right, is a hemp-based brand. So, I just got to ask you and get some clarity. Why did you go for hemp? Was that like a unique selling point, or was it more because of the environmental benefits that we see from hemp clothing?
Yeah, sure thing, bro. I guess when I started off Goodlids, I wanted to make hats that had sort of an element of sustainability or consideration to the natural world. When I was looking at I guess materials to work with, hemp was one that really stood out to me just because it had this really cool story. I mean, it has fantastic sustainability properties as a textile and as a crop itself. But it has this really cool story where hemp was used commercially widespread for a period of time up until like the 1930s, and then it kind of got caught up in the war on drugs, just with its relation to being a cannabis plant, to the marijuana and the psychoactive components of marijuana. And hemp kind of got caught up in that whole that whole debacle, and all the way through up until the last sort of 10 years. It's only now that we're seeing, I guess, a change in perspective towards marijuana and kind of just cannabis in general. And we're also seeing a really good understanding by the general public of the hemp doesn't contain those psychoactive components, and that it is really actually a commercially viable, and it could be used as a really cool crop for a number of different commercial products. Hats just being one of them. And in a world where consideration to carbon emissions, to the amount of water that we use to produce a garment and all that sort of stuff, where all those things are, they're important. So I think hemp at that point in time, when I was making the decision with which textile to use for Goodlids, hemp really spoke to me for all those reasons. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also the name Goodlids, like how did you come with that name? Because the brand that I had back in the day was called Yes Please. And I'm gonna tell you something. That brand name had no meaning to me whatsoever. I just really wanted to get stuck in with it. So how did you come up with Goodlids?
Yeah, I think the naming process was something that was quite organic for me. I remember just jotting something down and sort of variations. Initially, I wrote down this heading on a blank notebook, and it said "good fun projects," and it kind of was like good hats and good lids. Eventually, was sort of the where we got to with that. And yeah, it was, so I guess it was just like a natural evolution. I don't know how long it took. It might have taken 7 to 10 days for me to kind of like land on that. But yeah, that kind of made a lot of sense to me, because yeah, it just made sense in terms of what the hats are all about. And
Yeah.
yeah, it seems to have stuck. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely has. And just quickly going back to what you were saying about sort of the history of how hemp is viewed in the eyes of the public. So you guys launched in November 2019, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was around the time here in New Zealand we were having the referendums on marijuana, I believe, like recreationally. So when you guys went live, did you have any kind of like haters because they just weren't really aware of the fact that hemp isn't involved in sort of the recreational side of it?
Nah, not at all. We were really lucky, I guess, in terms of the timing of our of our launch of our product and our brand, and launching, speaking to customers, having a really good understanding of who our target customer was. And when we were having those conversations initially, it was all really, really positive. And if anything, we were really surprised by the level of understanding, not necessarily of like all the benefits of hemp, but certainly that actually hemp was something that isn't marijuana, and it is a good thing. So I guess maybe because of that referendum and because of their it being a really topical point in New Zealand at the time, we found that our customers had a pretty good understanding of what we were trying to do, and we're kind of on board with that from day one. So we were really lucky in that respect, where I think that if we'd tried to do the same thing a few years earlier, I think we might have been met with some skepticism. But as I say, really good timing, really fortunate, and it
Yeah,
wasn't planned; it just happened.
right. Yeah, so like kind of worked in your favor in the end, eh?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, going on to sort of like how the products actually look, Goodlids has a very unique and distinguishable look, in my personal opinion, and the opinions of others I've spoken to. So, just wondering, how did you sort of craft that look? Do you do the designs, or were you working in collaboration with other people?
Yeah, sure. So, um, in terms of the graphics on the hats, the illustrations, they're all a significant number of them, including our initial branding, was done by a guy named Sam Baker, who, when I was sort of conceptualizing the brand, I sort of had him in the front of my mind as somebody who I thought, if Goodlids was going to be what I wanted it to be, he had to be the guy that was going to kind of bring it to life. I just loved his look, and I guess that's kind of like the signature Goodlids like aesthetic that he really has a great understanding of, and he's really, really talented designer. So we've worked together now for over 3 years, or maybe coming up with 4 years now, actually. And we've had a fantastic working relationship, and like I say, he really understands the brand inside and out. And I guess we have the benefit of a long relationship, to fall back on. So it's really cool.
Yeah, awesome. And does he work for you now, or is he just contracting?
Nah. So he has a design studio by the name of Vacation Studio. And he's becoming, I think, a really iconic Kiwi designer. He's worked with Pals. He's doing some stuff, I think, with AS Color now, and numerous other great Kiwi brands. And it's almost like the emergence of brands, particularly like us and Pals, have sort of been helped along their way by Sam, and we've sort of seen him come up through, to I think commercial prominence through or alongside some of that work, which is epic to see, and epic to see him, I guess, like getting that recognition.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out Sam if you're listening to this. Well done. Um, and so a big purpose of my podcast is to, inspire, motivate, and encourage other people to get out there and chase their passions, give things a go. And one of the things that holds people back from giving their dreams a shot is sort of just that fear of failure. So, in the first 3 months of Goodlids being launched, what would you say were like the three biggest lessons?
The three biggest lessons. I think it's really hard for me to answer that in the first 3 months, because I don't think we had too many lessons. Like, I was pretty naive when I first launched, and we sort of tasted some relative success early on. But I mean, I guess looking back on it now, three of the things I think that we did, really well, that are lessons to me now, and that I would pass on to anybody else. I think being really open your ambitions and your journey and whatnot. I think that's really important. Like being open with your friends and your family and utilizing your network for that support and it's really it's really beneficial. It's really powerful as well because it gets you bouncing ideas off people and helps sort of accelerate that validation process initially. And at the same time, if you get them on board and they're sort of passionate about what you're doing, either as sort of just a passionate bystander or actually as a customer, which a lot of my friends initially were, again, that sort of amplifies the initial exposure that your brand has. And in my case, what I did was I actually threw a party, like a launch party, and I sort of like invited all my friends and like the admit fee for or the entry fee or ticket or whatever was you had to purchase a hat. I think that's really important as well because it's cool to be able to have your mates support you along that journey. Kind of like financially as well. Like obviously they get mates rates and all that sort of stuff, but up front having like 50 friends coming along to this little party and then selling 50 hats is like really cool. And then obviously having all those people head out that weekend and the week after wearing my hats and their own network of people as well as it sort of got everything going really quickly. So yeah, I think the biggest lessons in those days, in those early formative days, were to kind of just be really open and surround yourself and with your network of family and friends and really utilize them.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, networking is, as everyone should know by now, is like hugely important. You need to build a good network and rely on your friends and family as well to help get things rolling. Because, as you say, I mean, like if you're not open with people, then it's just going to make it all the more harder to actually get the ball rolling. And when you said that your friends came out and in the following weeks they were wearing the hats, how do you remember how many different like designs you had during
Yeah, we had
that launch?
we had 10 different
Oh,
designs
nice.
during that launch. So I think they would have been pretty recognizable as well for sure at that point in time. So yeah, and we also had like a physical location as well. I think that there's the low hanging fruit in this day and age is to it's so easy to set up a Shopify store and start selling product. But I think having that physical component has been something that we've always really tried to cater for, and I think it's been a really big part of our storytelling process is actually having those hemp products accessible at a physical location. So we launched with a pop-up and we did sort of seasonal pop-ups for our first sort of 18 months business, and then as soon as we couldn't afford to, but as soon as we almost could afford to, we opened up a store as well. So we rolled the dice on those sorts of things, but I think it really paid off because it really sort of sets you it sets you out from the sort of
Yeah,
similar
yeah,
size
from the
small
rest. Yeah,
businesses.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess that's another thing that we did that I think has worked in our favor as well in this day
Yeah,
and age.
yeah, awesome. I completely agree because, yeah, as you say, I mean, like the saturation of, like online stores is so huge. And it actually is just like an enjoyable experience going into the shop. And I visited the shop myself a couple of weeks ago. It's where I got this t-shirt.
Oh, sick.
And yeah, I mean, like the vibe is just so good. And I think that's important to have that physical place for your customers to go to so that they can really sort of connect with the brand on a more personal and emotional level.
Yeah. I think so. I think it's a really big part of it, And yeah, it's ever evolving as well. In terms of like establishing that vibe and also trying to balance it commercially as well with selling product and displaying product and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's yeah, it is essentially the goal for that store is to try and create a positive experience for customers and prospective customers.
Yeah, for sure. And so going back to sort of the launch days, if you don't mind me asking, how much capital did you start the business with, if any, really?
Yeah, bro. Yeah. So I think I sort of chipped away. I was working full time. Um, I sort of chipped away on my own salary for with the designing process and sampling and whatnot, and then the initial order. Um, and I wouldn't have thought it would have been more than 5 grand New Zealand dollars all up at that point in time. So yeah, you know, we doubled down pretty hard because, and this isn't something that I'd necessarily recommend, but we doubled down pretty hard. Again, that was like a bit of naivety or whatever, but I think our initial order was for like 500 units, and we sourced that from overseas as well, which again is potentially not something that I'd recommend starting off with. But yeah, it ended up working out reasonably well for us. I think we sold through the majority of those within the first 2 or 3 weeks of business,
That's
in the lead up
incredible.
in the lead up to Christmas, and yeah, I guess after that we were on our way.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, like 500 units within the first few weeks of launching is really impressive. And in your store, you guys also have more porks, which you've acquired. Um, how and why did you decide to acquire more porks?
So there are a few reasons. Firstly, like I would say the biggest reason would be I have a really strong emotional connection with the brand. It was definitely my favorite brand growing up. Probably when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Those are kind of like the years where I just like basically everything more porks that I could get my hands on. I would. And yeah, so from my point of view, it was a brand that I really loved and had a strong admiration for, and it did provide a bit of inspiration for Goodlids in those formative days as well. But then from a commercial perspective, I feel it's quite a good business to have from a diversification point of view. Like Goodlids is a reasonably seasonal business, obviously hats being a summer product, and my thoughts were that we could potentially offset the summer trade with a brand like More Porks, who the core products were rugby jerseys, jackets, and blankets and whatnot. So it made sense from a commercial perspective as well. So, but first and foremost, it was an emotional decision.
Yeah, awesome. And is owning a successful brand what you thought it would be in terms of like, it, was it? So I mean, like from when you launched in November 2019 to where we are today in January 2023, is it, when you look back on the journey, is it kind of easier than you expected, harder than you expected?
Um, I would say that I got really really lucky with a lot of things. Like I don't think that I could replicate what I've done today. If I started out today knowing what I know now, I don't necessarily think that I could replicate what I've created with Goodlids. I think a big part of it is sort of this, like, the name was super catchy. It was just good timing with the referendum. At that point in time, it wasn't overly saturated, and you can get some really good cut through with like digital marketing and whatnot. So I think the journey has kind of just been the journey, and I love it. I love what I do. There are some things that um, are hard. A lot of it has been pretty cruisy. Um, in terms of the success of the sales and whatnot. It's kind of looked after itself, which we're incredibly fortunate to have had that experience. But yeah, I guess any business like presents its challenges, and I think that you know it's I'm so stoked with the journey that we've had to date. But I think it's a we're only at a very early stage of where I'd be keen to take the brand to. So, and with that, I think comes a lot of challenges. Growing a business is stressful because as you grow, the numbers get bigger, and you win hard, but you potentially lose harder when you're at that bigger stage, playing with a bit more money and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty cool, man. Like I definitely I get caught up in the day to day like a fair bit, and like I don't necessarily look back and like smell the roses enough. I probably should, but I just I kind of look. I tend to um look like forward rather than to look back. I'm more of like a get like stressed about like the future than like
Yeah.
get like rosy about the past kind of guy.
Yeah, for sure. And just while you were talking about that, you briefly touched on the marketing side of things. And
Yeah.
so I am a marketer by trade, so I am always interested in kind of like learning about how different brands and people go about their marketing. And I mean, coming into the fourth year, you're obviously doing something right. So I was just wondering, what are some of from your experience, the marketing do's and don'ts? And were there any kind of like surprises, anything you tried that worked out a lot better than you kind of expected?
um I don't know about don'ts. I know what's worked really well for us has been, you know I've sort of played to my strengths as a marketer. I would have thought I'm a reasonably good copywriter, but I don't have like fantastic, you know, visual content creation skills. Um, so I think I was pretty quick to opt to outsource the aspects of marketing that I wasn't super strong at in those early days. So I like had a good understanding. I was like, okay, look, I'm having some really good success with like my copywriting, and I've got a good understanding of like the digital ads, paid ads, landscape. Um, so where I needed to fill in the gaps, was some of that visual content. So we outsourced um, that in the early days. So I think maybe like just being willing to obviously spend money early on with your marketing I think is quite powerful. Like I don't know, I don't know what other businesses like do and don't do, and I'm sure that there are other people that have had success without a big ad spend or whatever. And we kind of did early on because our focus was organic growth, but we still did use paid ads and had good success with them. But yeah, I guess the biggest thing is kind of like figure out what you're good at naturally, double down on that, and the things that you aren't great at, get somebody who is good to come in and give you a hand with them, and and pay them to do that. Like I've forged like fantastic relationships with content creators throughout throughout the last few years, and yeah, it's great to create those working relationships and grow them and land somewhere where you got like kind of like a network of creators around you who have a really solid understanding of what you're trying to do, and yeah, it sort of I guess compounds and becomes stronger as you go on.
Yeah, 100%. And So with your brand, you source the hemp from China, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so are you thinking at all in the future to possibly get involved in crop production here just to bring, the whole process local?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We don't have any immediate plans to be involved in crop production. There's like significant, production underway locally, not necessarily in the fiber space, but more in the uh, hemp heart, which is kind of like the food and topical stuff, whereas the fiber is like the stem or the stalk of the plant. However, there have been some like recent leaps and bounds, I think, in the New Zealand hemp fiber industry. From my understanding, there are a few bigger clothing brands. You could probably guess them. I'm not gonna say the names, but you could probably guess them. Who are sort of doing a bit of um, development in that space. So it sounds like there's some really cool things going on, and I think that once those big boys pioneer that and set up the infrastructure, then there's a great opportunity for a brand like Goodlids to come through and really use that um, production, New Zealand productions, story to kind of like to create a bit more appeal from like an export perspective. So yeah, look, it's not on our immediate radar for a few reasons, but it's definitely something that if it became viable, we'd like absolutely jump out. It'd be so sick.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So just something off in the corner that, it's there, but not we're not shining the torch on
Yeah,
it
we
just yet.
we keep yeah we definitely keep our ear to the ground, which is cool. But yeah, it's something that yeah it's not quite there yet. But once we figure out it, once we get a sense that it will be, then yeah, I think we'll be jumping at it for sure.
Yeah, awesome. And look, I need to ask this as well. So, I'm a fan of streetwear. I know you're a fan of streetwear. So, quick question to you is, would you be willing to name, other than your own brands, three of your favorite NZ brands right now?
Sure. Okay. NZ brands. Porter James Sports. Good mates with Josh Ayres and with Goodlids have collaborated with them already. Um, Obviously, I own more porks as well, so I'm probably not going to shout them out. But look, I'll give huge. I love Ugly. Like what they've created, what they've achieved as a New Zealand streetwear brand to the world is pretty incredible. It's pretty impressive. And Valentin founder he's had a fantastic journey to do that. It's pretty cool how big they were, and how big they are now as well. But it's yeah, that's pretty insane. A third, there's heaps of brands out there that are doing really cool things. Like Earls is doing cool stuff. I think we've got clothing around the
Mhm.
corner. Yeah, I don't know, like Huffers sick. What they've done as well is fantastic. Stolen Girlfriends Club. I don't know, like we've kind of in the last like 10-15 years almost been in like the golden era of of New Zealand streetwear. So, long may it continue.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Like, there's actually a lot of talent out there once you start kind of, listing it off, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And you when I asked the question, you were like, "Oh, NZ." So I gotta ask, do you have just like globally a top three all time kind of brands?
Well, I was actually chatting with my brother about this the other day. Patagonia are kind of, they're not a streetwear brand, but they kind of are like they're a pseudo streetwear brand, I guess.
Yeah.
So Patagonia, I think are really, really cool. They have that sort of combination of everyday wear, but it's the type of thing that you could also wear like in a blizzard and be sweet as. And then their sustainability and their kind of principles of business are fantastic and incredibly admirable. Um, I think Ralph Lauren are they're the OG streetwear brand. They kind of like tailor to the like the royal family versus
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like the kid like hustling on like the corner block, which is really cool. And then I'm a really big fan of a slightly more niche brand. Not really; they've got like 250,000 followers on Instagram, but Only New York. Also, like I don't know if you've heard of them. They're a sick streetwear brand as well, which I think they do a really good job with like community engagement, um, which I think is really cool as well. So yeah, those would be three of my favorites and brands that I sort of like, you look to for inspiration and through a lot of the things that they're doing. So yeah, but I mean, when you compare those three brands to what we've got in New Zealand, I think it makes you really appreciate the scene here and how strong it is, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you go about collaborating with other brands? Like I'm sure someday you would love to collaborate with like Only, right?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think that one thing that works in our favor is that we have like a super like easy product to do brand collaborations with. A hat is something that you kind of just like slap a logo on and and you can run that in collaboration with another brand, which is really cool. In terms of like outreach, um, I've just found that a lot of these things like happen organically. You kind of like meet in a small business sense, you might just like email the founder and be like, "Yo, you want to catch up for a coffee and just have a bit of a brainstorm, see whatever." I find that thing really cool, particularly in New Zealand, being able to everybody's quite open to just chatting and working together and like giving feedback and advice and all that sort of stuff. I've had really positive experiences in that respect. Not just in clothing, but in all other bits and pieces as well. So I don't know. That's kind of how a lot of my collaborate or how a lot of our collaborations have have worked out. I think that we collaborated. Our first collaboration was we made some hats for pals who I know a few members of their team, and then we did some hats for Wax Mustang, who's the rapper, and we kind
Yeah.
of just networked through. I think I sent him some product at a point in time, and he wanted to make his own hat. And then Parrot Dog Brewery, we did a collab with, and that was just because Matt Krostowski, one of the founders, was just a customer of ours, and he just reached out. And so yeah, I think they all kind of like happen quite organically in our experience. I mean, I think we're super keen to continue to grow that side of our business, and I think it's a really important part of the Goodlids offering is those collaborations, because they're super exciting for our existing customer base, and it also allows us the opportunity to expose our brand to other brands customer
Yeah,
bases,
yeah,
and
for sure.
just an interesting take on their brand and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's super good fun. I really enjoy those collaborations.
Awesome. Yeah, some of the collaborations, like I was actually caught up with my one of my friends this morning for a coffee, and I was telling him about how I've got you on the show later today, and he started mentioning how he has one of the Parrot Dog collaboration tees, which
Oh yeah,
is
cool.
such a cool tee as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so kind of now just winding down on the episode here. I did mention, earlier what my mission and purpose with the podcast is. So, you're someone who has obviously gone out and, tried to go for your dreams, and it's proving to be successful. So, for anybody listening, what is some advice that you have for people who might be wanting to give something a go?
Um, yeah, I think the advice is kind of always more or less to just give it a crack and see how, like, the I wish there was a better term for it, but the only term I can think of at the moment is there are 100 ways to skin a cat, right? Like, if you stay pretty nimble in your approach to doing what it is that you want to do, and having that ability to pivot, I think that you're always going to be better for the experience of having given it a crack. Um, I have this measure that I come back to when I'm feeling like stressed or overwhelmed. Um, whether it be from a decision or from like bills or just kind of like life in general, I always, take stock and like take a second to think, is this thing that's so stressful or so scary to me now, is it going to matter in like 5 years' time if it goes wrong?
Yeah.
And 99, or 999 times out of 1,000, the answer is probably no. And so I think having like strategies and techniques like that in mind when when you're going to make a big life decision, or if you're going to take a risk, it's like it's important to remember that it's all recoverable. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, why not give it a crack, particularly while you're young.
Yeah. 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 How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 28.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, so
so
yeah, super young, man, super young. And Dane, just before we finish off today, in preparation for today's interview, I asked my listeners, to send through any questions that they might have for you. And so I've picked out a few of my favorite ones. So the
cool.
first question that came through was, did you have any prior businesses to Goodlids, and what worked in those, and if so, like, if you had any that failed, why did they fail?
Sure. No, Goodlids is my first business. But what I did have is I had really cool. I had a really cool job for a business called Vista, which is like a sparkling water
Oh yeah, yeah.
company, and I was working for them when they were like very much a startup. So I didn't have like my own business experience, but I had experience working in like a really really early stage business, and so I think that I was I was certainly, they made an impression on me, working with young guys, the founders of Vista. And that was quite formative in the sense that I was like, this is something that I'm really keen to do. Like, it looks like fun.
Yeah, yeah. And what was your role there?
I was like a marketing assistant. So it was like I was at uni when I got that job. It was like an internship role. And then I carried on for about 12 months, I think, after I finished up uni and while I was sort of starting Goodlids in that role. So, but yeah, like I say, that was a really formative experience for me because I was my first sort of exposure to, like, I didn't know that young people could like start businesses.
Yeah, yeah,
I was super naive to that. I was like, if you want to start a business, like you got to like, you know, like have some experience. So,
yeah, yeah,
so, and I kind of did, and you kind of give it a crack as you go. But yeah, it definitely opened my eyes up to. I was like, oh wow, actually, this is cool, and this is something that it's not just limited to I don't know other people. I can give it a crack myself.
yeah. Awesome, awesome. And another question that came through, which I actually really like this one, because I didn't actually think about it. So when Good Lids started, it was just the lids on your head, right? So why did you go with hats? Where was the gap in the market, in your opinion?
Um, I just really liked, like, I always sort of like wore hats when I was at uni, and so it was a product that I really kind of understood, and um I was, yeah, I knew what I wanted. I felt really strongly about like what I wanted, and because I couldn't because I couldn't get what I wanted in the market. I was like, it's like so many other businesses, I guess. I was like, it was born out of a desire, the selection of choosing hats was born out of a desire just to have what I wanted, and the market, and kind of have a bit of fun along the way. So, yeah, and in hindsight, hats are actually a really, really good product. Like they're super light, they're easy to ship, like one size fits most. Like you remove so many of the frustrations of like an early business in terms of just like inventory and whatnot, and with having that type of product. So there wasn't something that was factored into that decision. It was again just naivety and luck, and like they're a really good product, and I'm pretty stoked on how it's all turned out.
Yeah. And the last question, Dane, is where do you draw inspiration from?
Where do I draw inspiration from? I don't know. I'm inspired by like so many different things. I can be inspired by like the success of other brands. I can be inspired by failure and just general kind of like storytelling as well. I think I often having a morning coffee and just having a chat with like a friend, you walk away like feeling inspired. So I have many sources of inspiration in life and in business. And I think just like checking in with all those sources like super regularly like keeps me really, really energized and like super motivated. So yeah, I think that to whoever's asking that question, it's like, I guess maybe look within and see what inspires you, in all sort of walks of life, and just tap into those sources of inspiration and whatnot, as often as you can. Something as simple as just like reading an article can like spur creativity and excitement. So yeah, whatever it is, whatever your source of inspiration is, just like dial into it and let it stir you up and motivate you.
Yeah, cool. Really, really awesome answer there. And just to finish things off here, now is the time for you to just let people know where they can find out more about Goodlids, where they can go purchase products from. So stage is yours.
Yeah, sure. So we're at Goodlids on all major social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And then our website is www.goodlids.co.nz, and that's our online store as well. And we've got a physical store in Mount Eden in Auckland. So yeah, it's all there.
Awesome. Thank you, Dane. I really, really appreciate you coming onto the show. I was super, super excited when you hit me back up to say that you would come on. So once again, thank you very much for coming on. Really, really do appreciate it. And for everybody listening at home, if you have made it this far through the episode, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Like every week, you're coming out here supporting my dreams. And all I'm asking in return is, if you did enjoy this episode, to just please send it to one person who you think might also enjoy it. And please leave me a rating on Spotify. And without further ado, I will see you guys next week.